Welcome to the Faith Film Fan Podcast, your one-stop shop for the place to go for all the latest and greatest in faith films. And today we are talking about a very special film. As a matter of fact, it's a one-of-a-kind film. This has never been done before. The name of the film is Jesus, a Deaf Missions Film. It is a film that is for those who can't hear. It's got American Sign Language throughout, and it's the story of Jesus. And today I'm so excited to have the director, Josselyn, with us. This film is going to be in theaters on Thursday, the 20th of June and Sunday, the 23rd of June. And you can go to jesusdeaffilm.com for more info. And Joseph is going to be signing with us. Joseph is deaf himself, and he has a interpreter with us, and his interpreter's name is Peter Dublin. So Peter will be speaking, and he'll be signing to Joseph. Joseph will be responding to him. So we'll be hearing from Joseph through Peter. All right. So, and then you can look at the video and you can see Joseph. Joseph's a good looking guy. He's a good looking guy. And here's so Peter, so
shucks.
oh shucks. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Jesus, a Deaf Missions Film. Tell me about this film.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Really, this film is the first of its kind for deaf, by deaf, completely in sign language. It's for the deaf community, and it's been made by us. You can see on my shirt here, it says for deaf, by deaf. And, the deaf community has a long history of watching films, whether that's something about related to Jesus or not, but most oftentimes we're watching the film, relying on those subtitles. Oftentimes there's that disconnect from what's happening on the screen to what's being said. And so with this film, the subtitles are not needed to understand what's happening. There's not an interpreter needed in the corner of the screen. This film is completely in American Sign Language, so they're able to watch a movie in their own heart language, and we are really, really excited about this film.
What an amazing, amazing idea. Has this been done before, American Sign Language in film, where the characters are signing and it's an entire film just in sign language?
So yes, it has happened before. There have been previous films that have been produced, whether independently or not. However, this one is unique because it's the first full featured film that is hitting over theaters, but now over 300 theaters. A lot of times, it may be small, like either community centers or locations, but this one is the first one to hit the big screens. And I would say the largest budget for any deaf film as well.
Fantastic. And again, it's going to be in theaters Thursday, the 20th of June and Sunday, the 23rd of June. And you can find out information about how you can go see this very important film at jesusdeaffilm.com. That's jesusdeaffilm.com. And, if you know someone, if you have a loved one in your life who is hearing impaired or deaf, I invite you or encourage you to go and bring them to this very, very important film. So the film also has subtitles and a soundtrack. Is that made just for those who hear?
It is. Yes, it is. So there's a couple things. So we have the English subtitles. That's for the hearing community as well, so they can have access. And the music score is actually for both hearing and deaf community. We added the music because we knew that as a hearing person, sitting through a movie without any sound at all would be really painful. And so we wanted to have that music score there for deaf, for hearing and friends of deaf as well, to enjoy the movie experience. And then as well, deaf people can enjoy that music too. A lot of times, we feel those vibrations, especially with the loud bass when that hits. And so that's part of the movie experience as well. And what's really cool is that the folks who made the soundtrack for the film, two guys in particular, one hearing and one was deaf as well.
How does someone deaf make a soundtrack? How's that possible?
So the deaf man who was a part of that used to be hearing and lost his hearing later in life. And so he, along with the other hearing producer, helped with that. They made a great team. They worked well with each other's strengths.
Amazing. So talk to me about, because I'm a film director as well. So talk to me about just the process of being deaf and directing a film. Tell me about just the process of that.
Absolutely. So we started first with the script, and the basics. No, you know the basics. So we developed the script first. Our goal was to really make sure that the storyline of this focused on the heart message, more than necessarily trying to be accurate with line by line script or Bible translation. Our vision was to see, a lot of times you have stories that are really consolidated, but this, for our deaf audience, we see like the healing of a deaf person or a healing of other certain people. Some of the stories, for example, that we actually left out in the script. Once we came up with that script, then we began the casting process. In this process, we realized that we wanted every single actor to be deaf, and that sign language was and is their heart language, because we wanted this to be as authentic as possible. And that was the best way to do so. So we began that process, which had its challenges. There are a lot of deaf actors out there, but that pool, when it came to the screenings and the auditions and stuff, we actually hired a SAG from a guild that was not part of the union, that we couldn't hire. So that actually shrunk our pool of actors a little bit more. So we wanted some top-notch actors that really helped bring the cast to life in this film. Once we were able to do that, then we went on from there and started shooting.
Talk to me about directing the action and the acting, the process of being a director, as someone who is deaf. Talk to me about what that looks like.
Absolutely, sure. So a lot of times that perspective is how. So think about like the walkie-talkies or whatever, we're all deaf. So those are not needed, right? So we would use our hands, the visual cues. We tap on each other's shoulders, whatever we do to get everybody quiet on the set, get ready to go. We'd begin the shot. Once that was done, once that shot was completed, we would either wave our hands, or a lot of times I would just take my hat and throw it onto the set. We actually had somebody customize a pillow for us that had cut written on it. And so embroidered on it rather, and that was tossed into the scene. So that was just one way that we used in order communication, creativity when it came to stopping the scenes. And then also with framing each scene, we had to make sure that the deaf person was visible and what they were saying at all times. We didn't want to miss what they were saying, right? If you miss what they're signing, you miss the information that's being said. And so that was a challenge as well, making sure that each shot was framed in such a way that all the information was presented.
So I understand you've got actors that are deaf and are coming from being able to sign from a very authentic perspective, but you've also got cameramen, you've got assistants, you've got grips, you've got lighting people, you've got lighting designers, people on the lights. Does everyone on the set need to understand sign language?
They do, actually, they do. Everyone on set was deaf, almost everyone. Now, there was a couple of hearing folks that were on this set who already knew sign language, but our core team, absolutely, 100% no sign language in order to communicate. And we had to rely on interpreters every once in a while to explain. So, I'm sorry, we did not have to rely on interpreters to help it cast the vision or when it came to communicating, anything like that. That in general. Now, I will say there was the exception. We did have to hire a hearing person because of their experience. For example, whenever we went to the water tank scene when we started filming that, we didn't want to do the lighting ourselves because of our experience, lack of experience. So we hired somebody who knew what they were doing. We relied on an interpreter in that case, and everything went smooth as possible.
Similar to how we're doing this interview. You've got an interpreter, you're explaining the vision to him, and then the interpreter's telling the lighting guy, okay, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. Great. Fantastic.
Exactly.
What an amazing idea. I've never heard of anything like this. And to tell the story of Christ this way, talk to me about just what was the steps and your inspiration to make this film?
So the inspiration to making this film goes back all the way from when I was a child and I watched Jesus of Nazareth back in the 80s, or 90s. I can't remember when it was, but watched that film. And of course, I read the subtitles and just had that thought. I wonder what it would be like if this film had a Jesus who actually signed. And so that was the beginning of this dream. That idea actually became reality just a few years ago, whenever the level of experience and equipment and the budget and everything came together. We felt like this was the time. We were ready to begin filming. Another great producer is Michael Davis. He's deaf as well. He has the same exact vision. And so we came together to work on this project, and we felt the timing was definitely right now for this.
Amazing. And was some of this filmed during COVID, or was this all after COVID? And if so, did COVID slow you guys down?
So it was an odd time, I will say that. Honestly, everything has just kind of been overwhelming, this whole process for the past couple of years that we've been going. Now that we're on this side of it, I'm like, where am I sometimes? We started before COVID. It was when we began the initial phase of everything. After a year and a half or so of COVID, and it began to settle down some, that's when we began shooting. And so we had the conversation, do we have masks or not? But it got to the place to where it wasn't as mandatory, and so we decided we didn't even have to worry about that. As we followed the state requirements. But no, I would say it didn't really affect us too much, but it was an interesting time, to say the least.
What are some of your hopes that you'd like to see for the film?
Man, my hope is that everyone, seriously, in both the deaf community and hearing community, will watch the film and will walk away with this, one, knowing Jesus better, knowing who he is, and really coming to a better understanding of things that, man, I didn't know this or didn't understand this from that unique perspective and along their faith journey. And then also to have a better understanding and appreciation to the culture, our deaf culture. It is a much different experience. And so I pray that other people will have just some further insight into how unique our culture is.
Talk to me a little bit about your own journey with Christ, your own coming to faith, and what is important to you about that.
Well, I'm very thankful that I grew up in a Christian home. Now, I will say I became deaf at the age of 2 years old. My parents did not know sign language at that time, but thankfully they took the steps necessary. They learned the language, and that was my foundation for understanding who Jesus is. I don't remember all of the details, but what I do remember is I came to a point where I realized I need Jesus. And in my bedroom, I prayed and asked Jesus to come into my heart as a 12-year-old boy. The next night, I did the exact same thing as Jesus to come into my heart. The next night, I did the same thing. Jesus, will you come into my heart? And I told my dad, hey, Dad, I've been asking Jesus to come into my heart the past several nights. And my dad had to help guide me on that process. Said, son, it's only a one-time thing. So you don't have to keep doing it. But that was my experience of accepting Jesus into my own heart.
And then how is that now, this faith in Christ? Because I was a 12-year-old boy. That's a long time ago. Talk to me about your journey with Christ and how you have now been led to be a filmmaker. So talk to me about your job as a filmmaker in connection with your calling and commitment to Christ.
So like I said, I grew up in a Christian home, and my faith journey had its ups and downs for sure. Have always loved making movies. Growing up as a child, I always was enthralled by cinema, and see the reactions of other people at the finished product and the message, see how that message might actually help and inspire others. So my faith journey along through college became stronger. And as the older I got, when I was asked to join Deaf Missions team in 2006 as a video producer, I really began to understand that this was for me. Now, understand, I was in California at this time. Deaf Missions is in Iowa. So for me, everything's good in California. I had a good paying job. The weather was great. I worked for a language company. It was non-faith based. But when they offered me the job in producing Christian content with a Christian organization, I thought, man, this is my passion, is to make content, make movies. And along with my faith, I really felt like it fit well. And so that's when I became part of Deaf Missions in 2006, and it's been history ever since.
Okay, what is Deaf Missions? Tell me about that, and what is the connection of Deaf Missions with this movie?
Sure. So Deaf Missions was found in 1970. I'm sorry, 1970. And their main goal was to create gospel-related content for the deaf. With that mission, they wanted to be able to communicate clearly through sign language to the deaf community. So they've developed all kinds of different resources. So my strength was video content, developing visual resources, a variety of content. One was the Bible translated into American Sign Language, Bible resources and curriculum. And so Deaf Missions has been creating content like this for a long time. Once we finished the ASL, the Bible and ASL, we really had a desire to reach more people around the world with the gospel. And we thought the Jesus film would be an excellent tool to do just that. And so that's how this came to be.
So the film that you're talking about, the Jesus, a Deaf Missions film, that is part of this this mission, Deaf Missions. Well, Jesus, a Deaf Missions film, part of Deaf Missions.
Exactly.
Imagine. It's so easy.
And so it's a funny thing. The title, where we had the conversation where we had, okay, so the title of Jesus, but how do we show that it is a deaf film? We didn't want to say deaf Jesus or Jesus being, we didn't want to associate that. So Jesus signs wasn't one thing, but we didn't want to think of the signs of Jesus. So we felt like Jesus is the title, and then a film by Deaf Missions, a Deaf Missions film is who produced it. So that's how we came up with that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And so Deaf Missions, if people want more info on how to find out about Deaf Missions, where do they go for that?
Sure. If they go to www.jesusdeaffilm.com, or they could go to www.deafmissions.com as well.
Okay, great. They can find out the resources, what's there. So many things available for those who are hearing impaired or deaf. So is there a difference between hearing impaired and deaf? Are those two different things?
So hearing impaired has been somewhat seen as not such a great term for the deaf community, it's a very old term that was used to describe and has some negative connotation to it. But we love the term deaf. We go by that all the time.
Okay, so hearing impaired might be, my mom. She's 87 and she can't hear anything you say half the time. So that would be hearing impaired. And deaf is not able to hear at all.
There you go. There you go. That could be that too. So we also say, and deaf also includes the culture and the language and that identity that we relate to as a deaf people group as well.
Okay. Okay. Great. So talk to me about your enjoyment of filmmaking. What do you like about filmmaking?
So a couple things. One, I just love being on the set with people. I love the actors, the cameras, the lighting, all of that. That moment of, impromptu, let's just make it happen, and all that stuff. Just everything that happened on set is an absolute joy. Probably the most exhausting thing, but I absolutely love that part. And then I'd say the another thing is after the movie is completely done is to be able to see the reaction of the audience. That is a joy to see how they're moved in that moment. I love seeing that.
Amazing. So again, we're talking about the film Jesus, a Deaf Missions film, in theaters Thursday the 20th, also Sunday the 23rd. You can find a theater near you. More information by going to jesusdeaffilm.com. And so you said you lost your hearing at the age of 2. Do you have any memory of sound?
I do not. No. I'm profoundly deaf. And so, no, I sure don't.
What happened? How did you lose your hearing?
So it was actually spinal meningitis. I had a extremely high fever, and that destroyed the eardrums. And my mom, of course, not knowing what to do, was very upset. But thankfully, she got the right resources, was able to learn sign language, and moved on from that.
So I'm just thinking as you're telling this beautiful story of Christ, and he brings hearing to those who are deaf. Do you portray that? Do you portray the scene where Jesus brings hearing to a deaf person in the film?
Actually, we did not include that in this film. We did not at all. And the reason for that is because the deaf community, we have a strong identity related to that. We're proud of it in a lot of ways. And so a lot of people who become deaf later in life want to receive that hearing. But those who are born and raised in the deaf community and the deaf culture, we're proud of that. And so in the film, Jesus, we did not include, we felt like it wasn't a good fit, if you would, for our community. Yes, we know that Jesus healed a deaf person, but this was in a time and a culture where maybe there was no access to language, or for whatever the reason might have been, that, Jesus had that reason in that special moment. So for the film, though, that wasn't really the point. That we wanted to really focus on his love and forgiveness and what he did on the cross.
Amazing. Amazing. Can you help me, someone who hears and doesn't really, can't imagine what it would be like to not be able to hear? And then I hear you say the deaf community is proud of that. We're proud of our, that we don't feel like it's a handicap maybe? Would you say that? And then so help me as a hearing person, how can I relate to deaf people? What can we do together to have more interaction and more acceptance?
That's a great question. I would say as a deaf community, we don't see ourselves or label ourselves as handicapped. We realize that there are some limitations that we have. Sometimes we rely on the interpreters or we rely on closed captioning. And that does help us to survive and work well in a hearing world. But to be, and some would accept that title, that label of disabled, but growing up, we're used to it. This is our life. This is who we are. Sign language is a part of the language. It's a beautiful language. It's a beautiful culture. It's unique. And so for a lot of hearing people, like I understand growing up in a hearing family, in a hearing world, losing their hearing can be quite an experience. And to your question of how to engage with deaf people, the best way is to learn our language. We use sign language to communicate. That's the best way. Take those steps to learn our language.
Now, I know that you're married with 5 children, 2 of which are deaf, but that would mean you have 3 children that hear. Can you talk to me about parenting children who hear? What is your family like?
So as I am deaf and my wife is hearing, she knows sign language and is fluent in the language. These 2 were adopted. And so, yes, they've learned the language. The others were born later. I'm sorry, the others were born later. And so the 2 that are deaf are older, interacting with the younger children and communicating with them has been a really good thing. They've been able to pick up their signs, obviously because I'm deaf and having 2 other siblings who are deaf. So we call them child of deaf adult, or also known as CODA. Very interesting. Sometimes they'll start speaking. I'm like, hey guys, did you forget? Pick up those hands. I'm deaf.
Okay, so this is what I want to know. How in the world do you argue with your wife? How does that happen?
I never argue with my wife.
There you go. That's how that works. Same with me. Same with me.
No, no. Oh, that's fun. No, we do. We communicate through sign language. So whatever happens, it happens in sign language. I have a little bit of voice, but she has to sign for me to understand what she's expressing. If not, I don't get it. So she's got to pick up her hands as well to have that conversation.
Do you read lips?
The general answer to that is reading no. Maybe very small, like thank you, or very minor things, but no, typically I don't. Reading lips, a lot of the phonetics that are made in the back of the throat, you can't pick those out on the lips. You can't recognize that. And so the work that it would take is so difficult. So no. Sign language is what I use, and any typical deaf person would be the same when it comes to lip reading and sign language.
Well, it's so amazing that the gospel of Jesus is for everyone. And he said, for those who have ears to hear, that this gospel is for those who have ears to hear. And he's talking about something other than going through and vibrating your eardrums. He's talking about a different kind of hearing. So I would love for you to talk about what you hear in the gospel. What is it that's beautiful in the gospel that you hear?
Let me think of something specific, but I'm not able to right now. I would say the main thing that I hear is I hear the love of Jesus, that he came, lived a life, and gave of himself completely. And he gave us, gave us the abundant life as well. And so I feel so blessed and content, and I'm filled with peace, knowing that Jesus really is all I need. And just thinking overall how he is full of grace and his love. Really, those are the things that stand out the most.
So amazing. So amazing. Well, we've been talking with Joseph Josselyn, the producer and director of the film Jesus, a Deaf Missions film. You can find out more information by going to jesusdeaffilm.com. Film also includes English subtitles and a soundtrack. So, how would someone bring, let's say, like you have deaf friends or someone that you know who's deaf? What would be the best way to get them to know about this film? And do you encourage hearing to go along with their deaf friends?
Most certainly. Um, I would say whatever they feel natural, that natural connection. If they have that natural connection with everyone, great. If they have friends that they're close to, I think Facebook, social media, different sites are the really good ways to invite their friends to come watch the film. For hearing folks, if there's a hearing person who has a natural connection as well, I would say yes, invite them, go together, go watch the film, let them know you're going to be there. Whatever feels natural, I'd say go for that. I think that's really where those natural relationships are already built. I would say you just go with that.
So, even if you don't have a deaf person, or even if you're not deaf, this is still a film you can go see and enjoy. And I know it'll probably be available. There'll be a digital platform, some digital streaming. But the reality is, I say this all the time on the show, these films are not cheap to make. They're expensive, and they need you to go buy a movie ticket. They really need that. Tickets need to be purchased because that's how the movies are funded. And so you could probably get it cheaper online if you wait 4 months, but you know what? Don't do that. Go support this film. Go get a ticket in the theater and say, I'm wanting to support the deaf community. I'm going to support this film, and I want to see more things for this community. And this is important. This is important what we're doing here. So I'm encouraging you to go buy a ticket this Thursday, this Sunday, and go to jesusdeaffilm.com to find a theater near you. Joseph, what a pleasure. What a joy. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Likewise. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. And Peter, it was great. Thank you for your great help in interpreting and being our go between. Thank you so much for that. You did a great job.
You're welcome, brother. My pleasure.
My pleasure as well. God bless you guys, and go see the film. Thank you so much.